Continuous call team, 2GB out of Sydney, but they go all over Australia. David Morrow is the lead caller, but on board, you've also got the Big Ma, and that's Daryl Broman. You've got Piggy Riddell, you've got Boyd Cordner, you've got Mark Levy, Gal, Josh Morris. This is the CCT. They're brilliant, absolutely brilliant to listen to on the radio. David Morrow, thank you so much for joining us again. Welcome back, mate.
Thank you, Martin. It's a pleasure.
Well, we spoke a few weeks ago and the Warriors were going okay. Well, now they're going better than okay. So where do you assess where they're at right now?
Well, at the end of last weekend, I didn't say make a silly comment. I just said, don't be surprised if the Warriors play the North Queensland Cowboys in the grand final.
Wow.
Because it was shock horror on Daryl Broman's face. But I read a little column today written by none other than one of the all-time greats, Andrew Johns, who talks about the Warriors maybe a chance of winning the premiership and the Cowboys maybe a chance of winning the premiership. So maybe I'm not so stupid, but one quote he's given today, Andrew Webster has to be the Dally M Coach of the Year. That's out of Andrew John's own mouth. That says a bit about the Warriors.
Wow. Well, we've got a fair few games to go in the season yet, but what he's obviously alluding to is the momentum right now of both sides, right?
Yeah, and the thing about the Warriors is their defences. I said to you earlier, and Andrew points out a few little things their forwards are doing. He said they're finding gaps, and as a result, Sean Johnson's probably playing the best football he's played for years, and he's really enjoying it, and all the backs are enjoying it. And what about Martin Devlin? I don't think you wind the clock back 10 years to when he was doing this sort of stuff. He's been outstanding, and you look at the draw. You got 5 at home, you got 4 away, and you got a bye. The 4 away games, 3 of those, well, you'd think on paper you should win. The Dolphins, the Gold Coast and the West Tigers. The other away games, Parramatta. If you win all the games at home, you'll be not only in the top 4, you might even be in the top 2, which means you win one game, you get a preliminary final at home, and then you win that game, of course, you're in the big one. So there's a lot to look forward to, I reckon, as a Warriors fan.
Starting tonight against the Rabbits, though, and, even a few weeks ago, this game was flagged as like a real competitive test. You get over this game. Does that change it all because of the form that the Rabbits are not bringing in?
It doesn't. They'll come prepared, but, I'm just not sure. I called their game last week, and they were just totally out enthused. This is, admittedly, we talk about the North Queensland momentum starting to build, and that was what it was built off. But they didn't, they didn't have their best players out there in North Queensland. They had some of them. But the Rabbits, they looked ordinary. And Cody Walker probably had the worst game I think I've seen him, but he was coming back from injury. And that is the big danger for the Warriors tonight if Walker's on song. But Johnston looks as if he was carrying an injury. Of course, no Latrell Mitchell. But when he's not there, they just don't seem to fire. And some of the forwards look tired. And Murray, you can understand if he was a bit tired last week, backing up from State of Origin. But it's, I don't know what it is, but Souths at times this year have looked lethargic. And if they don't start looking at themselves in the mirror, they will lose tonight and they'll find themselves out of the 8. And that's something no one would have thought of about 5 weeks ago when people were touting Souths as the premiership favourites.
We've also got to mention the Eels, David, who are on 5 in a row as well. So if we're talking momentum, they've got to be in the conversation.
Well, they do, and people say, what are they doing differently? I said, I know they're doing anything differently. The thing about the Eels early in the year, they were being beaten by 2 points, 3 points, 4 points. They've been thereabouts, and of course they made the grand final last year. So you've got to think, there's something that's going right. Of course, they're doing it without Dylan Brown the last couple of weeks. It's amazing how their attack seems to have gone better since he wasn't playing, and I'm not sure when he will be playing.
No,
Apparently, the NRL is actually going to consider a further ban on him. But when you think they're scoring all these points without him, you wonder what will happen when he comes back. And we all know, and all the New Zealanders know now how good he is. It's right. The thing about it is, Martin, there's probably 12 teams that can make the 8. I think there's about 5 you could say can't. And of those 12 teams, I tell you now, I reckon any one of them, if they got into the right position at the right time, could win the comp. It's so tight, this comp, that the teams that aren't providing, like the Warriors aren't providing a heap of State of Origin players, so they're going to be fresh. They've got their bye coming in a couple of weeks' time. I think that's going to come at a good time. They've got a good run in, heap of home games. I really can't see the Warriors, missing the 8. I think the Warriors are entitled to give themselves a huge chance of being in the 4. And really, history says you've got to be in the 4 to win the comp. they may be there.
David Morrow from the Continuous Call team with us as we're talking the Warriors and especially this game against the Rabbits tonight. A couple of things about this. Are they getting good headlines now, the Warriors in Australia? Are people appreciating this? Is it a good thing for the competition that they're playing well?
Oh, it is. It's a good thing for the competition. Whether they're getting the headlines, but I said, here's Andrew Johns, who has a big column in the Sydney Morning Herald every Thursday, and he's talking refreshingly about the Cowboys and the Warriors, and perhaps sneaking under the radar of some people's thoughts, which is, this is the thing that I think every team at different times this year has been touted as potential premiers.
Yep.
You can knock 5 of those out. It's an amazing competition, but the Warriors are getting. I think people have started to take notice that when the Warriors scored, they beat the Dragons easily, yes, and the Dragons are running last in the comp, yes. But the Dragons rarely lose in Wollongong. And the Warriors could have doubled that score last week, which says a lot about them. Doesn't say too much about the Dragons, but it just says where they're at. Now, they hadn't won. They won twice, I think, previously. They'd only won 2 games in Wollongong in the entire career of the New Zealand Warriors until last Friday night. So, there's something that's going really well. And I've said to you when we spoke earlier this year, the thing about Andrew Webster is not just his ability to get the side to attack well, they're defending better than any Warriors team, I reckon, I've ever seen defend. I may be wrong, I haven't got the figures in front of me, but I'm only just saying what my eyes are seeing. They're defending goal line better than ever.
And it's then being able to recover from defending like that and then go down the other end and actually counter-punch and score points. That's what's really impressing, I think, a lot of fans here. The ability to absorb and then the ability to lash afterwards.
Well, they're helped there, haven't they? They've got Johnson, who's got a great brain. They've got the winger who's just, it doesn't matter where the ball goes, somehow he's on the end of it. And they've got forwards. Look, Fanua, the big bloke, Fanua Blake, he's just... He is playing better than any prop forward in the competition, I reckon. And while he's going forward and while he's fit, they're a huge chance. They've got some great back rowers. Everyone's doing their job. I mean, the fact that Curran's coming off the bench, 25, 30 minutes into the game as he has the last couple of weeks, this bloke can hurt in defence and hurt you very much in attack. So something's going really well there. And I think I heard Sean Johnson say after the game last week, he said, we're a great bunch of blokes, we enjoy each other's company, and he said, we're having fun. And it really just said to me, they're really enjoying their footy. And that's one thing, as with the Warriors, you've got to get them all happy together. Mm-hmm. And if you get them all happy together, anything can happen.
A couple of other things that, a lot of the players have talked about being at home, and, I know that there's a lot of empathy over your side about the fact that they've been there for a couple of years, but I think a lot of people here who'd gone through COVID as well kind of wondered how that actually does affect you. When it comes down to it, we had Tohu Harris this week on the program. He was talking about it, Sean's talked about it, Dallin's talked about it in terms of, just being around your kids, being around your family, just doing those things. And I don't know about you, David, but it made me kind of reflect myself, and I thought, when I was doing breakfast radio, as busy as I was and intense as the job was and everything, one of the things I always used to ask myself, God, have I spent enough time with my children? And that does really bite you. And it just made me think, maybe that's, more of what it is than anything else. Maybe that's settled and being at home thing. I mean, it's too easy to kind of dismiss at times, but maybe that is a real big thing.
I think it's a huge thing, Martin, especially the sort of different culture that a lot of those lads come from. And family is just the most important thing to them. And having to spend all the time they spend over here, then to go home. And I think everyone, so many people in the NRL, the fair income supporters, have the Warriors as their second team because of what they endured during COVID. I mean, they've got a lot of support here. You mightn't see it on the field, but at home watching it on telly, you'll be amazed how many people actually support the Warriors through thick and thin. So I think, and what you're saying is right. I'm certain they're a lot happier because they're at home, and they're not homesick. They're actually playing footy, and because they're winning games and enjoying their footy, it's reflected on the field.
David Morrow with us on the platform. David, let's go back to Andrew Webster, because again, the team is playing well. You can see very much the changes that this guy's made. You can see the players are fitted, the happiness that they're playing with, all of that kind of stuff. Can one coach really make a difference, or do we have to pay some credit as well? Because I've been a big critic of the administration, but I'm sitting back now and saying, listen, everything changes together. You don't just have one thing that changes, and maybe that, whatever is going on upstairs, they've created an atmosphere. I don't know what it is, but can you just put it down to one guy, that coach, or is it bigger than that?
Not necessarily, but my great mate Warren Ryan, who I called a lot of football.
I love Warren, yeah.
I think he could write the Bible on how to coach rugby league. But he once said to me, he said, you know what, there's only a committee of three is all you need to run a rugby league club successfully. I said, what's that, what? He said, one permanently overseas, one permanently sick, and the coach.
Oh, look, before I became a Warriors fan, mate, I was always a Balmain fan, and until they joined with West, and I keep asking Warren, why did you take Ciro and Blocker off, mate?
Well, the funny thing about that, Martin, is he'd taken them off the previous two games in hot weather too. So, I mean, I remember I called the game, and I thought, well, I wonder when he's going to take these two off and put Popchi on, and it happened. You know, look, if you go back to the game, I mean, anyway, I'm not going to reflect on it.
No.
You know, Harrigan made a horrendous error, and it changed the game. And that's the end of the Penny section. Benny's field goal that missed by a centimetre.
Yeah.
And then the biggest story for the next 20 years was that the crossbar was actually 2 centimetres higher than it should have been.
I love those stories. We talk about how close this competition is, and we're looking ahead to the Rugby World Cup this year as well, where for the first time, generally, 5-6 teams could actually win it. Why is the NRL comp so close this year, given the fact that the Panthers for a couple of years would only lose 1 or 2 games?
Yeah, well, I think, Martin, the fact is we've got an extra team, so that the better talent is more evenly spread. And I back in 1982, when Canberra and Illawarra came into the comp, I remember Jack Gibson talking to a group of us saying, this is the weakest this competition's ever been. He said, because the talent's more evenly spread, but at the moment there's 3 teams that can win it, and that's it. And that was Canterbury, Parramatta and Manly. And then, you know, we brought 4 teams in 1988. But this year, when that happened, I thought, gee, have we got enough talent to fill 17 teams? And I'm not sure whether we have got enough talent to fill 17 teams. But I know one thing, we've had the closest competition of all time, and there's no team that stands out, with the exception of Penrith still having this amazing ability to defend better than anyone else. And that's the thing that when push comes to the crunch in finals football, it's your defence that'll probably get you over the line more so than the attack. And that's the thing I love about the Warriors this year. They've learnt to defend for each other, and as you say, they can turn their defence into attack pretty quickly. Whether it's, that's just my own feelings, whether I'm right, whether I'm wrong, but it does make sense that every team's been, just take one player out of every team. Well, let's just take 2. Say you've got a group of 30-odd. So, 16 teams by 2, that's 32 players that have gone from, say, not that every club gave them 2 players, but there's 2 players, so you've got to find 2 players that weren't good enough to make your 30-man squad last year that are now in that 30-man squad. So I think it's just evened up the talent a bit. And if they bring another team in, heaven forbid what they're going to do then with the talent, maybe we'll have an 18-team competition where any team can win it. But I have a look at the AFL here, where they've got 18 teams. There's about 5 teams every year that are always languishing at the bottom of the table, and it's genuinely hasn't worked because they haven't got enough players to play at that level, and they're going to bring a 19th team in. Anyway.
All right, a couple of questions, we'll let you go. When you're talking about defence, I think if you look at the points table, 2nd or 3rd or whatever, as far as defence goes, the Warriors, you're exactly right. 34 points, the most the team's conceded against the Knights, 28 against Brisbane a fair few weeks back, but I think the last 6 or 7 games, the average is about 16 points a game. If you're only conceding that, you're going to win most of your games, aren't you?
Yes, you are, and that's when you look at Penrith over the last 4 seasons. They're averaging at around 12 points a game. And
there you go.
That's the thing. They're amazing of just what they've done and how consistent they've been in their defence. And Cleary's always said he talks often about, the only figure I look at is how many points we're conceding, because he said you can score tries from anywhere, but he said you've got to stop then scoring tries. And if you do that, and especially 12 or 16 points, in the modern game where most teams can score 3 tries in the twinkling of an eyelid, if you keep teams down to that, you're going to be in the big games, aren't you?
And finally, I mean, you get to call it one of the most pleasing things, one of the loveliest things as being a Warriors fan, watching again at Wollongong last weekend, was simply that the Warriors chant went up after about 5 minutes. So there's obviously a huge contingent of loyal Warriors fans who go along and watch this team play in Australia. That's brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah, there was. And then down there, of course, the southern suburbs and the southwestern area of Sydney, there's a lot of Polynesians and Melanesians as well, and I'm certain that there's a whole host of those that support the Warriors. I mean, when Fiji and Samoa and Tonga play here, that's a little bit different. But when the Warriors are here, they all bandy together and support one team. It's quite interesting. But there's pockets of New Zealand Warriors support all over Sydney, but most of them in that area. So to get to Wollongong probably wasn't that hard. But it was just one of those. I mean, I looked at the game and, I'm a bit partial to the Dragons. And I said, can they win tonight? And I said, surely they can. But no, the Warriors, mate, the thing is they'd won 2 out of 13, I think it was, before last weekend. Now it's 3 out of 14. And the Dragons, as I said, I think they'd won 7 in a row at Wollongong. I mean, they rarely get beaten down there. And it's a real litmus test for where the Warriors are and probably where the Dragons are. But tonight, South Sydney, if Walker's on song, the Warriors are going to have to be really, really conscious of that left side. But if Walker plays as poorly as he played last week, the Warriors will sweep the floor with.